The Evergrande crisis is far worse than you think. In fact, I think it's the start of a terminal, irrecoverable death spiral for the sea country. Let me explain. Firstly, some numbers. In Evergrande's latest financial report, the second largest semi-private property developer in the country lost a gargantuan 120 billion USD in 2 years. They have 344 billion USD in liabilities. They have been grossly misreporting their profits since 2015 by $92 billion. They owe money to about 300 domestic banks and financial firms and only have 620 million in questionably liquid assets. Now, if it were just Evergrande, the situation would be calamitous, but salvageable. 300 USD from everyone in the country could pay for all its debt. But unfortunately, an even larger company, Country Garden, is also quickly following in Evergrande's footsteps, for it recently failed to pay a bond repayment on its $196 billion of debt. Now, you might say the loss of the housing boom shouldn't destroy a normal functioning economy, but we are not talking about a normal economy. A third of GDP comes from housing here, and the housing development industry is how the local governments actually fund themselves. It works like this. Local provinces would sell land usage rights, which is essentially renting out land to developers. A company like Evergrande would purchase the right to build on the land and create a development plan, which it uses to secure bank loans, shareholders, and money from ordinary citizens buying homes. And land is used as collateral. This money would be used to build homes from the previous cycle, and at this point they would be looking at purchasing another piece of land and selling more imaginary homes to build these current apartments. This Ponzi scheme was the basis of the economy. Land usage sales generated 30 to 40% of local government revenue in 2021, but now the music has stopped. The amount of land sold has halved in 2022, and the bottom is nowhere yet in sight. Evergrande sales have collapsed 91% year on year, and thus they have failed to deliver on 720,000 homes. The flow-on effects are unfathomable. We are watching province by province go bankrupt. Currently, it's a trickle, but once the dominoes start falling, the central government would simply not have the funds to support all these local governments. This affects the funding of the bureaucracy and government, who themselves have taken huge pay cuts recently. Power supply, water, sewage, maintenance of infrastructure, education, at most worrying for the governments perhaps, policing. This has also led to the collapse of banks and other financial services. Over the last year, we've seen regional banks starting to go down one by one, first with withdrawal limits, but then scenes of desperate people unable to withdraw their life savings. But gravely, this collapse has started to spread to larger, even state-owned banks. And let's not forget about the millions of people who are now paying mortgages for their homes, which will never be built. This affects the Chinese people disproportionately. 70% of personal wealth in China goes into property, compared to about 20 to 30% in the West. Multiple generations of people in a family would all pool their life savings together to buy a home to set up the young for life. The loss of a home is beyond devastating, and that's before we start looking at the bankruptcy laws. Declaring bankruptcy doesn't wipe your debts from you, and you are still liable to pay the insurers back for what the insurers paid the bank off with. It will follow you forever, even if there is no home. And then there's everything else that's happening in the economy. Total foreign investment has fallen to the worst level since records began in 1998, plummeting to 4.9 billion in the most recent quarter, compared to 20.5 billion the quarter before. Historically, it's always been about 100 billion US per quarter. This isn't a decline, it's a complete and utter collapse. Total exports are down too, indicating a collapse of manufacturing, which won't be saved by domestic customers, as consumer spending has only recovered 4% since the lockdowns last year. Ride-sharing platforms are also a good indicator of consumer spending, and they have also collapsed. Didi went down from 45 million users last year to now just 10 million. Ctrip saw their collapse from 26 million riders to just 6 million. Youth unemployment numbers are now also so terrible they're not even being published anymore. First quarter this year, it was officially a staggering 20%, but but that covers only cities and only those actively looking for jobs. It's believed that another 20% are lying flat at home, so the real number might be close to a devastating 40%. Furthermore, the economy is in deflation, so the estimate of 280 million people living on less than 1200 USD a year, this number can only become worse at this point. And the C country is also suffering from an unprecedented 7% in annual deficits. And I haven't even spoken about all the other debts. The high-speed trains, for example, is $900 billion in debt with no hope of profitability. And then you think about all the other wasteful infrastructure that's been built, like the Global Belt and Road initiatives, where all these debt-trapped countries are now all going bankrupt and are unable to pay the C country back. And what about capital flight, the water crisis, the food crisis, the energy crisis, the imminent problem of population collapse on a scale that's never been experienced before thanks to the disastrous one-child policy? Ladies and gentlemen, the C country's economy for the last 30 years has been built on debt on a scale of which the world has never seen before. GDP growth has been the result of using debt to build infrastructure. It doesn't matter what type of infrastructure it is, no matter how wasteful, it was built for GDP purposes. But after 30 years, there are only so many trains, so many roads, so many houses one can build, and with rampant corruption, this economic model simply doesn't work anymore. And after 30 years of unchecked debt, it is all starting to catch up with the C country, and with all the other terminal problems the country is suffering from, I really don't see any way out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching.